Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni has said that both him and Gardner Minshew are preparing to play in Week 16. So there's a lot of mystery here, guys. Hurts did not practice Tuesday. We know Gardner Minshew was at Coach Leach's memorial service as well. So there's not a lot of
Mike Leach,
so there's not a lot of practice to report on here. So this is going to carry on throughout the week. So number one, how do you handle a situation that is vital as this time of year in fantasy?
It's certainly tough. I think if you had to place a bet on it, so to speak, or I think the expectation has to be that it's more likely than not that he does not play. I understand that there's that Hurts saying, quote, definitely a chance, taking it day by day. But as we talked about yesterday, and certainly he wants to get out there and the competitive spirit, but they have to be smart. Eagles only need one game. They only need one win the rest of the way to clinch the home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs.
Crazy.
Which is, credit to everything the Eagles have accomplished this year. So they only need one game. And then, again, as we sort of talked about a little bit yesterday, if they beat the Saints, who they play in Week 17, if they beat the Saints, they own the Saints' first-round pick this year. And so if they beat the Saints, then that's good for the Eagles because it means the Saints will pick lower in the draft next year, a pick that the Eagles own. And so, not if he plays this week, obviously Hurts is going to play next week as well. But you could see them making the sort of calculation, let's give him a week. I know it's Dallas, whatever. By the way, there's a chance we play Dallas again in the finals and in the playoffs at some point.
That's a good point.
Right? So maybe we don't want them to get a look at Jalen Hurts and don't figure out our game plan of how we would play them with Jalen Hurts, because remember the first time they played, Cooper Rush was the Cowboys quarterback.
Right.
We have yet to see Dak versus Jalen this year. And so, I don't know. This is a story that you're tracking, but I think what you're doing is you're making sure you have another plan for Jalen Hurts. Whether it's Gardner Minshew or another guy as well. I'm lucky in that the biggest league that I have Jalen Hurts in is a keeper league, and so I have Joe Burrow. So I'm just whatever. I'm gonna roll with Joe Burrow.
Let's hear from both Hurts and Sirianni because they did discuss early this week on the potential of him playing.
Definitely a chance. Taking it day by day, though. Everybody knows that I'm dealing with something. I think that's pretty public. It's out there. I'm not one to really talk about myself. Obviously being a quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't run from that. But I'm taking everything one day at a time with it and preparing versus a really good defense. We're gonna talk about that defense today. Make sure we don't miss that.
He's at a sprained shoulder, and I do not put it past Jalen Hurts. I don't put anything past Jalen Hurts as far as his mental and physical toughness. So there's a chance he could play this week. And so he is one of the toughest guys I know. And he heals fast. He's a freak. His body is not like, pardon me, yours or mine, right? And so I'm shaming myself there a little bit too. His body's not like ours. He heals fast. He came back fast from his injury last year. And I will not rule him out. I will not put a timetable on him. And we'll see.
Lawrence, let's say the team protects the player from himself in this situation, especially with the stakes for the Eagles not being significantly high. Say it's Gardner Minshew. How do you see that impacting the rest of the offense starting at the top with somebody like A.J. Brown?
Well, we still going to start our normal Eagles players that we start any other week. You even get Dallas Goedert back. That helps Gardner Minshew. You still rolling out Devontae Smith. He's been on the road the past 3 weeks, wide receiver 11 over that span. And this actually might be better for them as, Gardner Minshew, while he is mobile, he won't take that rushing production away from Miles Sanders, away from receivers when they're moving down the field. He'll use his mobility to make that extra throw, so he could get the job done. He's averaged over 210 yards in his 2 starts last season for the Eagles and threw for 2 TDs in both games, so he could get it done in a spot start, and you'll feel the same pretty much about all the Eagles players.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think for the people that have, if you've got A.J. Brown, if you've got Miles Sanders, you've got Dallas Goedert, who we expect to come back in this one, I think you're starting the normal Eagles that you would start. It's worth noting that one of Minshew's starts last year came against the Cowboys, in which they all they benched a lot of their starters in that particular game. But I agree with Lawrence that that hurts. That regardless of who the quarterback is, you're starting the normal Eagles that you would start. Here's the one thing. So it's a 4:00 game. So we may not know, and this may be some gamesmanship with their division rival, as opposed to we'll see. We're going to test it out preseason.
Yeah.
I think we will have. This is such a big story. I think we will have a lot more information as we get closer. Whether he practices, whether he, with the limited practice, whole thing. Game is in Dallas. Does he even travel? If they're not going to play, it depends. So we'll see. But it's worth noting. So it's a 4:25. It's a 4:05 game on Saturday. So you will have. Here's some of the games that will come after the 4:05 game. You've got Vegas at Pittsburgh. Maybe Kenny Pickett's available in your league. You're going to have Green Bay at Miami. Probably won't. But Denver at Los Angeles. Potentially, it looks like it's going to be Russell Wilson there. But, maybe Baker Mayfield's out there. Maybe Russell Wilson's out there. Tampa Bay at Arizona. So potentially Trace McSorley looks like. And then breaking news that just happened just before we came on air, which is that the expectation here is the Colts are moving away from Matt Ryan and going to Nick Foles for Monday night's game against the Chargers. So Nick Foles likely out there in your league as well. Yep. So there's a couple of guys you could pivot to if we don't have the knowledge. But I think the best case scenario is we sort of roll through those guys. Also worth noting, by the way, Washington is at San Francisco. So the chance Taylor Heineke and Brock Purdy is available in your league, that's a 4:00 game. You'll know if Hurts is active before the Commanders and Niners kicks off. Feels like to me, as I sort of read through those names, that my best chance is hopefully you just get Gardner Minshew. And if you don't have Jalen Hurts,
because you want those weapons with it.
Right, exactly. I think Minshew, even against Dallas is a bottom 10 pass defense over the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's always going to be pretty, but I think that Minshew is the best option of guys available if you're going to pivot. It just sort of depends on what the other options are. Because, again, like I said, in my keeper league, I have Burrow as well, and it's a one-quarterback league, so I'll just roll with Burrow. I'm not going to take the chance.
Let's pivot to one of those options because you brought up Kenny Pickett, and Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin has said Pickett, he's cleared concussion protocol. He's going to start Week 16. Barry, where do you have Pickett ranked this week if he is one of those guys that, listen, you're desperate and you have to go that route? Yeah,
and by desperate, that means there are 20 quarterbacks that are not available to you because I'm at QB 21.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett has a great matchup. Let's be clear. The Raiders are not good defensively. They're not good against opposing quarterbacks. They give up the 4th highest completion percentage, the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. This is a good matchup for Kenny Pickett to get back in the lineup. Having said that, he's got one game. Kenny Pickett's got one game this year with more than 14 fantasy points. And so does that come against a Raiders team that, had an emotional win last week? The crazy walk-up victory. Raiders still somehow magically alive. Game is in Pittsburgh, which is positive. So you got a West Coast team traveling east on a short week for a 1:00 game. Fairly desperate. Like if we were doing beer goggles, three beers and a shot to start Kenny Pickett is where I would be. Sort of like, I'd want to be pretty like, Kenny Pickett, let's roll. I'd want to be, glug.
More super flex Kenny Pickett rather than your one quarter. Yeah, it feels that way.
Yeah, a little bit.
If anything, it should be good for Pat Freiermuth, right?
Who? Zero targets from Trubisky.
Yeah,
Week 15,
good.
So
I think good for Freiermuth. Good for the. Kenny Pickett has obviously had an up and down year. He's better than Mason Rudolph. He's better than Mitch Trubisky for this offense. So for the Steelers players you care about, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, then I think this is a positive. Yeah, nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up for Pat Freiermuth, who was also banged up last week as well.
Yeah.
All right, another potentially big injury-related news is the Bears activated Khalil Herbert, who was dealing with a hip injury from the injured reserve. So he's designated to return. Listen, Lawrence Herbert looked great, quite simply, before getting hurt. He was starting to eat into David Montgomery's workload where it wasn't just 80-20. It started to become more 50-50 for Herbert. Are there any expectations for him as he returns towards the end of the season in an offense that is just looking for anybody to touch the football besides Justin Fields?
Yeah, I would say yes, but the expectation isn't anything crazy, right? After David Montgomery came back from his injury, and they were both in the game, Khalil Herbert averaged 9 carries and 54 yards a game, which is solid. Not enough to really diminish what David Montgomery did, and he was only getting 2 targets a game before he got hurt as well. So, and in this game versus Buffalo, right, that game going to be cold as hell. You're going to see a whole lot of running from both the quarterbacks, both the running backs on both teams. So this could actually end up being decent for everybody, and it's just going to be like, hey, whoever want to break that long touchdown run, have at it.
Yeah, listen, I think Lawrence's point is well taken. I agree with everything you just said. But then I think about, like, okay, let's take what you just said and translate it to fantasy, which is like, it's week 16. I'm in the fantasy semifinals.
Oh, starting?
Am I doing any, right, exactly. Are you starting Khalil Herbert?
No.
No, not unless something happens to David Montgomery between now and then. To your point, Bills give up the 12th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, and it's his first game back. And so what is that? We think he gets, I think if I had to pencil something in, I'd say somewhere between 35 and 40% of the running back snaps in this game. Like, he's 1B to Montgomery's 1A, right?
Sure.
I mean, like, it's not a full-time share, but it's more than just a backup role for Herbert. But I don't mind grabbing him and seeing how this plays out, because after Buffalo, they're at the Lions and they're at the Vikings. Now, Lions have played better run defense so far, but because of the mobility of Justin Fields, and the fact that, like, they didn't have Chase Claypool, like, they got Byron Pringle is getting targets on this team, and so you would expect, I agree with Lawrence, that they would go run heavy. Game is in Detroit, under the Dome, and then at Minnesota. So they have, after this week's game, which is at home against the Bills, they have 2 domed games. But the Vikings are a bad run defense in week 18 if you play there too. And while the Lions have played better run defense, they're not impenetrable.
Sure.
And so is there a chance that if we see sparks from Khalil Herbert this week, that he becomes flex-worthy against the Lions? There's a chance. So I don't mind picking him up. Again, by the way, there's always a chance that Montgomery gets hurt as well. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.